Hi, and welcome to today's episode. So, today I'm going to be talking about something that may resonate with you more than you expect it to, and that is called parentification. And it's not a term everyone knows, but if you're someone who feels a deep sense of responsibility for other people, struggles to set boundaries, or feel burnt out from constantly meeting everyone else's needs, this might be hitting home with you already. So, parentification is something I've seen so often in my work as a therapist, especially with people who identify as people pleasers. It's not just about behaviours, it's about survival strategies that you learn as a child and how they're still showing up for you today. So, I'm going to explore what it is, how it happens, and most importantly, what you can do to begin reclaiming your life from its grip. So, what is parentification? Well, it occurs when a child is placed in a caregiving role, stepping in to meet emotional or practical needs that should be met by the adults in their life because they're outside of the child's developmental readiness to deal with them. And it might look like taking care of younger siblings or being the emotional rock for a parent or managing household responsibilities that are far beyond what's appropriate for a child. You might have learned to monitor your parents' moods, perhaps step in to keep the peace, or put your own needs on the back burner to ensure that the household you grew up in stayed functional and reduced the likelihood of conflict occurring. So for some of you, this would have been quite subtle, perhaps, maybe no one told you explicitly, you've got to grow up and do this and do that. But for others of you, it may have been made really clear that your role was to fix things or to do this and do that or to make life easier for everyone else, or you should be seen and not heard. So if you fast forward to adulthood, these experiences that you have growing up and these messages you take in, they don't just disappear, they stay with you and, they stick basically. And parentification can become deeply woven into how you then see yourself, like your self beliefs, your views about other people or your relationships and how you view the world in general. So, for example, you might feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. So, saying no just feels like it's just impossible, and guilt creeps in whenever you think about putting yourself first because it just feels wrong somehow. You might be really empathetic for other people and you're so preoccupied with focusing on what everyone else needs, and you've done that for years, that you might struggle to know who you really are, who your authentic self is, and what that looks like. You might not even know what you want from life. These are all consequences of this parentification. Burnout might feel like a normal part of life as well. Like you're so used to running on empty, slowing down feels alien to you or even wrong. Like you can't just sit, you have to always be doing something. And these patterns make so much sense when you consider what you learned as a child was that love, safety, and approval so often felt tied to how much you did for others. It makes sense that that association over the years has grown in strength and not been weakened if you've been living life in line with those rules that were created for you and imposed on you through no fault of your own when you were growing up. So here are some signs parentification might still be showing up for you. And a big one, which is probably why you're listening to this podcast, is people pleasing. So you say yes when you want to say no, constantly anticipating the needs of others and putting their needs first at the expense of your own wants and needs. That hyper responsibility. So you take on tasks that aren't yours. You feel like you're the only one who can keep everything together, and it's your job to sort of sort everything out and get everything sorted for people. Another way is difficulty setting boundaries. So again, you might be familiar with this. Saying no feels selfish, or you might fear rejection or missing out on something if you don't keep others happy, like they're going to forget you somehow. Another sign is guilt around rest. So as I've said, when you try and sit or you slow down or you try and focus on yourself, it just triggers this wave of guilt or anxiety as though you're doing something wrong or you're going to be told off somehow. You might be resting and then someone comes home and you bolt up and you make yourself busy doing something. Even though rationally as an adult, you're fine to you're fine to sit down, you're doing enough, that, it just feels like wrong somehow to rest. Another sign is a fear of being vulnerable. So perhaps you don't want to burden others or risk appearing needy or nagging. So you soldier on alone. Even when you're struggling, you don't for someone to help or for someone's support. Do any of those resonate with you? If they do, let's be clear that these patterns aren't a reflection of your worth. They're these survival strategies that you learned in a system that placed unrealistic expectations on you. And I know it's probably hard to hear that as well, isn't it? To think of it like that. And that doesn't mean that the people imposing these rules on you are even consciously aware of the impact they're going to have on you. We're not saying it was intended to have a negative impact on you. It's just really helpful to increase your awareness of where these things come from so you can start putting them into perspective in terms of it being a learned behavior or response to a certain thing or situation or environment, rather than you feeling like it's this unchangeable, fixed personality trait. We just need to put it into perspective so you can start understanding it more and recognizing it for what it is. And then by doing that, it opens up the opportunity for you to actually change how things are for you. So you know that these are patterns, and therefore you can break these habits and create new patterns for yourself. So with parentification, from a trauma informed perspective, it can feel like you're living in a state of hyper arousal within your nervous system. So you might be constantly scanning for things that may go wrong, working out scenarios, or being hyper vigilant of other people's needs, trying to anticipate what people want. And, feel that feeling of like putting out fires before they even start. And that nervous system dysregulation, whether it's the hyper arousal of always doing or the hypoarousal of shutting down because you've been so overwhelmed for so long, it can make it feel really hard for you to feel calm or safe internally. It's not just about the behaviors in terms of how the parentification manifests. It's also about what your body learned to expect as normal and how that shows up for you in your adult life. So, how do you begin to unpick these patterns and break the cycles? So, as I've said before, recognizing the root cause. So, starting understanding these tendencies, whether it be showing up as people pleasing or overworking, always achieving, always doing, never being, or struggling with boundaries. Just recognizing that those patterns didn't come from nowhere. They're adaptations to an environment that required you to be more than a child should ever need to be. So let's talk about breaking free from the parentification. So acknowledge the impact. So as children, we all have these core needs beyond just food and shelter. These needs include like emotional support, safety, validation, and the freedom to just explore the world without these adult-sized responsibilities that are imposed on us. And when our needs go unmet as children, when you're made to feel responsible for meeting others' emotional or physical needs, your development is deeply affected. And acknowledging that means giving yourself permission to grieve that childhood you didn't have, because it's horrible to think about, isn't it? And grieving might feel strange, but allowing yourself to feel the sadness, the anger, or the loss honors the facts that you should not have had to take on those responsibilities. And then it's a powerful step towards healing. Unmet needs in childhood often lead to deep rooted negative beliefs about yourself and rules that you seem to impose on yourself. For example, it might be a really common one is I'm not good enough, or I'm only loved if I'm looking after people. I must put everyone else's needs before my own, otherwise I'm a bad person. Or just this sense of I'm responsible for everyone else. And these beliefs and rules stem from a survival mechanism, being attuned, being hyper attuned to others' needs in order to feel more safe as a child. But as an adult, these beliefs and these rules that you've imposed to help yourself through those experiences you were having as a child, they no longer serve you as an adult. And working with a trauma informed therapist can help you identify and rewrite these unhelpful beliefs and change these rigid, unsustainable rules into more realistic guidelines to live by. So there's various work you can do in therapy on processing past experiences, which will help change and shift your beliefs and your perspectives. And from that, you can then develop healthier beliefs about yourself, such as, I'm good enough just as I am, or my needs are just as important as everyone else's. And over time, you can feel this shift from feeling like you need to seek external validation to feel okay shift into recognizing your own inherent worth. And with the approach I use for therapy, because I combine a bottom up approach with a top down approach, it's not just that you get it, like you can get what you need to tell yourself, you also can feel it. You feel the difference within yourself as well. So, another step to breaking free from this cycle of parentification and people pleasing is to start reclaiming your needs. So, you've spent so long focusing on others that tuning into your own needs might feel really uncomfortable, or you might not even know what they are. So start small. I mean, it could be as small as literally like asking yourself, what do I need right now when you're working? Noticing if you're thirsty and actually stopping your work midway through rather than thinking you have to just carry on and go and get a drink. That is you then meeting your needs that maybe you would have otherwise ignored because you felt the sense of responsibility of needing to finish something. Or if you notice like you're holding in a wee, you need the loo, you need the toilet, but you just want to finish this, you just need to get this email off to someone, start there, start small and start pausing and go into the loo when you need to. That is you starting to listen to what you actually need and to actually give yourself what you need as well. And by consistently checking in with yourself in that way, you start to recognize through that your needs matter just as much as everyone else's. Once you've started tuning into your needs, setting boundaries becomes the next step. And I know if you've listened to other episodes, you're probably used to me talking about setting boundaries. But when you've grown up with this inflated sense of responsibility or your needs weren't prioritized as a child, setting boundaries as an adult can feel impossible. But boundaries are key to change and to healing, and they allow you to then to start protecting your time and energy and emotional well-being. And they will help you start even furthermore breaking the ingrained unhelpful patterns that otherwise reinforce the parentified role, basically. So you don't have to start big and you don't have to think it means like you can't do anything for anyone. You can set boundaries and still be a nice person and do stuff for people when you want. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. Starting small will help it feel more manageable. So, for example, instead of saying yes and taking on responsibility automatically without thinking, practice noticing and pausing. You could try saying something like, oh, I need to think about it and get back to you. And then you can go and check your capacity. You can check your calendar or diary and see if it's feasible. And also not responding straight away is a really good start to creating some space so that you allow yourself time to consider what you do truly want, especially if you're not used to asking yourself what you truly want. Think of setting boundaries as part of the process of retraining your nervous system as well to tolerate the discomfort of prioritizing yourself. And it's not just about putting your needs first sometimes, it's about learning to tolerate the idea of your needs being equally as important as other people's. So remember, boundaries aren't selfish. They are just part of being a healthy human being navigating the world. You'll find that as you start to break free from this, you'll need to address the guilt and the inner critic. So when you've had a parentified role, you'll probably find yourself feeling guilty or critical of yourself as you start to relinquish some of these imposed responsibilities, these responsibilities that you've been made to feel are yours to take on when they're not. So acknowledge the guilt or criticism when it comes. Say it to yourself like, oh, I'm acknowledging I feel guilty, or I'm noticing that I'm thinking I'm selfish, or I'm noticing I'm thinking people will think bad of me. Just notice the tone you're using towards yourself and the words, and remind yourself that it's understandable you feel this way and you're thinking this way because it's reflective of you doing something unfamiliar. When we feel discomfort, it's usually our nervous system saying, I don't like this because it's unfamiliar, not I don't like this because it's wrong. So just remind yourself of that. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means that you're actually working on breaking unhealthy habits and unhealthy patterns, and the discomfort is from that, how unfamiliar that feels to you. And then think about what you'd say to a close friend in the same situation if they were thinking and feeling how you are. Speak to yourself in the same tone with the same words that you would be saying to someone, you would be telling someone that you love and care about. Even if it feels weird or fake, just practice doing that to yourself. Just practice reframing, noticing the critic, acknowledging it, labeling it, and then telling yourself what you would be saying to a friend. A really transformative part of all this work is something that usually starts in therapy. And for some people, it sounds a bit out there, but it's so effective and transformative. And that is inner child work. And it can be just profoundly healing for people. It's about reconnecting with the little you inside, like that younger you, the part of you that had to grow up too fast. It's about you learning to, with a therapist, learning to take them under your wing and offering them what they needed back then: love, safety, and freedom to just be who they are. And as I say, that work often starts with a therapist who can guide you in taking younger you under your wing. But you can also begin yourself with small personal steps. So you could consider what younger you needed to hear back then, or what you would have wanted someone to say to you, and write a letter to your younger self. Or you could make some time to do something that younger you would enjoy doing, with a focus on doing something for fun only, rather than feeling like you're doing something for achievement, which might be more familiar to you. Those little acts or steps can help you connect with and care for that part of you. Remember, healing from parentification is not about getting stuck in a cycle of blame towards your family or feeling stuck focused on the past. It's about understanding the roots of your patterns. So the past stuff of where they've come from, so that you can make a different choice in the present. You don't have to navigate this all alone. Like, therapy can provide you a safe space to explore how these patterns have shaped you and to help you process past experiences that might need processing, and teach you ways to shift unhelpful beliefs and unsustainable rules around being the responsible one. And therapy offers you tools and techniques to help you move forward from it all, free from that weight of feeling responsible for everyone else. It does take time, but every small step you take towards putting yourself first, or even just considering yourself on the same level as everyone else, is a step forward to reclaiming your life so you can live authentically as the person you were always meant to be. And if today's episodes resonated with you, or if it's brought up any feelings you'd like to explore further, don't hesitate to get in touch. Visit my website, charlottebaileytherapies.com, and just book in for a free chat. It's no obligation. We don't have to go any further than that, but I can use it as an opportunity to tell you more about how you can break free from these old patterns and how I can help you. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you soon.